Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Matthew and Caleb. We just feel so honored that we had 19 years with your family and with Elizabeth. And I don't think we're going to be able to share anything that you don't already know about Elizabeth and how much of a joy she is and how much she brought to our lives. Some of the things that I think about when I think about Elizabeth is her ability to trust God and to love God in every single situation. I just remember how she would give him glory for a parking space up close, or getting a Starbucks drink, an upgrade to a larger size. Not only did she just recognize that those were treats from God, but she thanked him and she recognized it, and she found value in all the small gifts and the big gifts that he gave to her. I remember when she was in the hospital and we were FaceTiming, and she was thankful for the nurse that braided her hair. And for most people, they would just think that that was just a nurse's job, but not Elizabeth. She just knows that every single gift was from God.
She's so thankful. Yeah.
And I think that when you asked, what will her legacy be? It just feels like it's just going to be in every little thing that we do in our life. It's going to be the upgrade in our Starbucks. It's going to be every time I braid my hair. It's going to be remembering how she always thought of others before herself. Again, even on the day that she died, she was asking me how my day was, because she cared so much about others. And yeah.
And she, what we remember about her is her strength and her smile and her just positive outlook on challenging situations, just over and over and over, and watching her go through her own battles and just always caring about others just is an amazing. I mean, you guys are gonna fight through some times, and remember her strength. She was so strong. So strong.
We love you guys.
Love you very much. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I have a story about my dear friend Elizabeth Ryder. I've known the Ryders and the Ailports and now Rogers for about 20 years, isn't that right?
About 17.
Okay, so that's close to 20.
Yeah.
I round up.
Okay. So do I.
And one of the things that we enjoyed here is a recognition of joy. Elizabeth smiled. She smiled so much. She was full of joy. And one of the things that I loved is that over time or distance, we could pick right up where we left off. So thank you, Deanne, for being a good friend. Thank you, Amber, for being a good friend over busyness and time and distance. And so we enjoyed joy. One of the things, if you know Elizabeth, you will know that she cared about you, right? Did she care about you? Yes, she cared about you. And one of the things that she cared most is that she gets to see you again. So on behalf and with my friend Elizabeth, I want you to know your Savior, Jesus Christ, right? So that we will see her again, because that's what's most important in this life. Okay? Shall we enjoy some joy? What color do you like? Bubbles! We like joy! And what color do you want?
I want blue, but I'll take purple. Walking on water, blue.
Walking on water, purple, blue. There you go. And you want to head out there? Sure. Which color you want? Purple. Okay, head out. You go, girl. I'm not going to hit the camera. Well, I'm going to try not to. Yay! Oh, hot, good catch. So, in my appreciation of Elizabeth, and I thank God for Elizabeth, thank you, Lord Jesus, for Elizabeth. Thank you for the joy and for the strength of character, for the tenacity. This woman, my friend Deanne, and her daughter Elizabeth were the most tenacious and unrelenting in being all that Jesus made them to be that I have ever met. So I just give congratulations to these beautiful, beautiful people who won't settle. Thank you, God, for Elizabeth. In Jesus' name, amen.
So I first met your mom at your grandma and grandpa's 50th wedding anniversary, and it was my first time meeting the entire Ryder family. And I was a little nervous because sometimes that first time meeting the family, it's kind of a vibe of you got to prove that you can hang and that you fit in with everybody. And with it being a family of all boys, your mom was the only other woman, besides your grandmother, who was there to kind of show me the ropes. And she really just set the tone for everyone's accepted, there's nothing to prove, and just right off the bat, like, you're welcome, you're loved, and yeah, she really set the vibe for the Ryder family of the inclusion and how welcomed they all were. So there will be a large presence missing, but she really made me feel welcome right off the bat, and will be greatly missed.
So I remember the first time I met Elizabeth. It was at Holy Smokes event, and it was at Paul Felidis' house. And of course I knew Steve and loved Steve, but here was his wife, and obviously she was dealing with some mental challenges and physical challenges because of her health. But we ended up having a little chat together in the little television room. We sat on the couch, and we ended up spending almost an hour together talking about life. And it was wonderful because she just had a heart of gold, and I really saw the beauty in her, and we just connected super well. And I'm really grateful for that moment. I'm really grateful for that chance. After that, every time we would see each other, it was a coffee shop or whatever else, it was just a big hug, because we had that bond that you get sometimes when you meet somebody and have a more in-depth conversation. She was a woman of substance, and that was obvious, and had a smile. And so what a privilege and an honor for me to have known her just a little. So those are my reflections. Good woman.
Hello, I'm Stephanie, and this is to the family of Elizabeth. I just want to say what a wonderful woman she was, and in the brief time that I knew her, what an impact she made on my life, and the connection we had being California girls was amazing, and we really connected on the music that we liked and just the way she lived her life for Jesus. And so I just want to let you know for encouragement that if it's a long while that you know somebody or a brief encounter, you can make such a big impact in a short amount of time, like I did with how I knew Elizabeth in that short amount of time. So just encouragement, it doesn't matter. In a brief hello, whatever, you can make a big impact. So I'm very thankful for getting to know her for the short amount of time, and I know I will always think about her for the days to come until I see her again in heaven and get to hear her stories that I didn't get to hear on earth. So blessings to you guys, and know that she lives in people's hearts.
Sissy taught me how to wrinkle my nose, how to wear a beanie, and how to make Rice Krispie treats. When I was little, I would get in trouble, or I didn't get what I wanted from mom or dad. I would go talk to Sissy. She wouldn't fix it, but she would just make me feel better. I remember going to visit her at the coffee shop she worked at the Lake Elsinore Outlets when I was 2 or 3, just because I wanted to go see my big sister. I remember sitting on her waterbed and making her watch Cinderella with me every single night. If it wasn't Cinderella, it was a Disney sing-along or some other princess. She used to paint my nails whenever she would come to visit. That was one thing I looked forward to, was her painting my nails, because nobody else would do it. And those were some of the highlights of my childhood, when she would come to visit. one trip in particular where I was little. It was pre-2001 because Mom and Dad took me to the airport to go watch airplanes. And I'm sitting there watching airplanes, right by the gate, because that was a normal thing to do back then. And they told me to look by the gate. And I saw someone and I go, oh, that looks like Sissy. And she kept coming closer. And that's still one of my favorite surprises ever. It was my turn to surprise her when I was in high school. She knew that Dad was coming out. So when we landed, we met Steve at work. He dropped me off with Steve, and Dad went to the house, and all was normal. And then her face when I walked in with Steve made the whole trip worth it. We went to the zoo. We took the boys to their first baseball game. We went to a Sky Sox game. We both love sports. Mad Angels fan, just like me. She loved Jim Edmonds. He was her favorite player. She loved the Ducks. She loved the Packers. She taught me to love the Packers because when I was growing up, we didn't have a football team in California. As I got older, the trips changed. It wasn't as frequent, but she always made sure that she knew how much she loved me. Our relationship was special. She was the best big sister anybody could ever have. She'd call me all the time. We'd Skype, especially with the boys growing up. She knew how badly I wanted to be a part of that. So she always made sure that I was involved. She came to visit me in Idaho not long after I moved there, so this would have been last January. I showed her around my new home. She got to meet my fiance. She slept on my couch, and I could hear her snoring because it was a one-room studio. But I was so close to my sister. And even though the trips, they changed, our families changed. There was a couple things that stayed the same. We always had our time with just me and Sissy. We watched sports. She would paint my nails. I'd try to paint her nails. Usually didn't go so well. And I'd cry like a baby every single time she left. From the time I was little until I was 24 and 25 years old. Her last trip, the trip to Idaho, we sat and we watched the Gilmore Girls revival. She's the one who turned me on to Gilmore Girls. She always described our relationship a lot like Lorelai and Rory. And though she wasn't my mom, our relationship was more than just sisters. She called me her little girl. That's how she treated me. She treated me like a daughter. I had a great mom and she knew that, but she was just that extra, it was just extra love in my life. Years ago, she made me this collage with pictures of me and her when I was a baby, pictures with me and the boys when they were little, all three of us, me, her, and my little sister. And it had on it 1 Corinthians 13:13. For now there are faith, hope, and love, but of the greatest is love. And that's how she lived her life. And whenever I think about that, that's how I remember Sissy. Her faith and her hope were strong, but her love shined brightest of anything. And she made sure I knew that. She was the best big sister anybody could have.
Hey guys, so trying to think about one story with Elizabeth is kind of tough for me. I was really thankful that we got to be such good friends in kind of a short period of time. It's just tough. It's tough to think about one thing or one story, but every time I was around Elizabeth, I felt cared for. And just that there really wasn't anything that she wanted other than just that I was loved and that she knew that somebody around cared about me. Not for anything that I could bring or not for anything that I was doing, but just because she loved me, she cared about me. And there was never a time that I was around her that I didn't feel that way. When I say that, you think, I'm sure she was, small, and we know she was didn't weigh but 100 pounds. But that's not really what I mean. It wasn't like she was like, hey, I love you, you're so kind. She was sweet, but man, she would tell you to get your shit together too. And she did that for me a lot of times. And Justin, I believe in you, and I believe that you're more than the way that you're acting. You can do this. Step out and do it. She had this weird way of just being so encouraging and courageous and just way, way stronger and bigger than she really was. She just had this way of projecting herself. And it was always with love. It was always with care, just super caring, but it was powerful. And so when I think about Elizabeth, that's what I think about. Just somebody that can make anybody feel really cared for, and that you could do whatever you needed to do, and that she was in your corner. When I think about Elizabeth, that's what I think of.
Well, I just want to share some things about. Well, I went to her house and I had a good time. I went to the playground. My mom is friends with her and I miss her. I really want to see her. She's so nice. I just want to do things. I just wish she wouldn't die, but so I went to her house and they gave the food. We went to her house. I missed her since. Well, I never got to see her before she died. I miss her. I just wanted to just see her one more time before she died. But she like died and her kids can't see her anymore. I just want them to be happy, and she loved God. She died and she went to heaven because she loved God. I just want to see her. I want to be like her, to be nice to my parents. I want to, after when my dad got surgery after that happened. And it was a long time ago. I just want one more thing for that to just, I wish that would have happened before the COVID. I just wanted just one more part of her. She was the best mom. She was nice to her kids. She loved God because she knew that he would protect her. That's why. I know that she would just, when I die and go to heaven, I want to tell her things about her mom on TV, talking about her. Her mom really loved her. It was really sad when she died. Her mom was so sad when that happened. It was so sad. I just want her to die. I didn't want everybody to be sad about it. When I heard that, I was asking my mom a lot of questions. And it was really sad. It just was really sad. It was sad.
All right. Just wanted to just share how thankful I am for the hospitality that Elizabeth showed to me and my family every time we would go to the Springs, and always inviting us into her home. And while we were there, just always being so encouraging in regards to motherhood. Her example of motherhood was pretty phenomenal. She loved her boys so much and just was always such an encouragement to me as a young mom of 3 little ones. So, and she was always so welcoming to my children as well. Just inviting them to play outside on the trampoline or at the playground, or even having old toys that her boys played with that my little ones got to play with as they continue to grow up. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that we just loved Elizabeth. We love the Ryder family, and we'll continue to pray for you guys, and just she will live on in our hearts for sure.
Well, I'm Frank Perez, and this is my wife, Lucy Perez. We've known Elizabeth and Steve for the better part of about 20 years. I first met Elizabeth at Focus on the Family, and that was back in 2000. And actually, Elizabeth and Steve were dating at the time, but she worked in my department and essentially became my right arm in our sales department. And a lot of folks know Elizabeth in a personal way, but I knew her not only just in a personal way, but also in a professional way as well. And one of the things that I can say about Elizabeth is that when it came to work, she did not suffer incompetence or irresponsibility. She is the poster child for not sucking at work. And she was just such a great worker, such a great help to me, a real blessing to our department. And if anything needed fixing, she was the person that got it done. And there were many times where she got upset at a particular situation with an account or somebody in another department in the ministry or something. And by right, she's a very passionate person. I just regarded her as a spitfire. But one thing that I do remember about her was that she had composure. She had gracious restraint. And she knew how to address individuals properly, even in a crisis situation. And I think that's because she was just a loving person and a caring person at heart. So, of course, through our time working together, she got to meet my wife, and then essentially I got kicked to the curb, and then she became really, really good friends with my wife. So I just wanted to kind of hand it off to Lucy.
So he came home from work one day and told me about Elizabeth and that I needed to meet her. And we had just built a house. Long story short, I had hardwood floors I didn't know how to clean. So she was going to come over and teach me how to polish these hardwood floors. She knew how to clean houses. She had done that in the past. So she came over, and I'm pretty big and pregnant at the time. And I'm thinking she's going to show me how. But instead, she did it for me. And I was like, wait, you're not supposed to do the floors for me. You're supposed to show me how. But she's like, no, just watch. So she ended up cleaning my hardwood floors for me. First time I ever met her. And shortly after, we became really good friends. And shortly after that, when I had my baby, she threw me a surprise baby shower. So that's how quickly our friendship grew. And she'll be missed. Lots of coffee, lots of conversations. God was the center of our talks. Well, all that to say is that shortly after that, I threw her baby showers and held her little Caleb that was the smallest baby I've ever seen in my life. He literally was like up to here, and I left her home with this baby thinking, how are you even going to change his diaper? And she was fine. Well, I got this covered. She had no doubt of how to take care of that little tiny baby, and she loved her boys and her Steve. But she'll be missed. She was special. Just genuine person.
Hey Steve, hey boys, we love you so much. We think you guys are just so amazing. Elizabeth was just the sweetest person in the entire world. She'd always text us on our birthdays, just so friggin' sweet. And we just hope that this year just brings so much joy in weird, random ways, and that you guys can find joy in the little things and remembering how amazing Elizabeth is and was, and remembering her smile and remembering the joy that she brought to everyone around her.
I'll tell a quick story about Elizabeth. It's my favorite thing. As a worship leader, it's kind of hard to know if you're doing good or not, unless Elizabeth is in the crowd. Everybody has their eyes closed, and I would look up and Elizabeth would just be like, good, that's a good one. Or she'd be like, that's not good, that doesn't sound very good. And I always appreciated that and loved it. So I always knew whether or not our worship music was trash. But that is my story about Elizabeth. I love her and I miss her.
Hey guys, so just share a couple, I don't know if I'm going to share stories of Elizabeth, but I do want to tell you guys that one thing I told Steve right away when I met Elizabeth was that he's a better guy because of meeting her, Not only that, she's made our family much better. She brought us all together. She kept us going. She made getting together on a regular basis and staying in contact an important part of our family. When we first met, I was a little concerned. I think I was trying to remember when exactly we met. I think it was like 6 months into Steve dating. And when Steve said that they were engaged, I was thought, man, he's going pretty fast here. You sure? And but then I flew out and I met her, and instantly just knew why Steve would want to marry Elizabeth. She's such a great person. We got to spend a day together going down to Royal Gorge, and it's really just spent the whole car ride just talking, and it became pretty obvious that she was going to be an important part to our family. The amount of times we laughed together, I was just remembering that trip, how she was driving me back to the airport, and I asked her to stop at the bookstore. We were just laughing and looking at books and laughing, and I ended up taking too long at the airport, and I missed my flight. She was really calm and cool about it, and she was like, all right, let's figure this out. And she's pretty fantastic. So I know a lot of people are going to share their memories and say really nice things about her, but you guys got to know that this is how we're going to choose to remember her. This is our truth. This is how we all are going to, moving forward, when we think about Elizabeth, we're going to think about, these stories of laughter and coming together, and just how important she was to all of us. All right, I love you guys, and talk soon.
I'm sharing this for Matthew and Caleb. And Matthew and Caleb, I know eventually you're also, hope you share this with your kids, your sons and your daughters. And maybe there's somebody that is thinking about great grandmother Elizabeth Ryder, and you're just wondering about your heritage and where you came from. And I met Elizabeth after I met Steve. You guys, what happened, this was 8 years ago for me. I was involved in an accident. My entire body was crushed from here all the way up to the top of my skull. I broke almost every bone. I was in the hospital for 2.5 years. And your mom, your grandma, your great-grandma, she was also going through her own health struggles. And every time I ever got together with Elizabeth, I gotta tell you, she was so hopeful. She was so encouraging. She always had a smile regardless of everything going on in her life. And even though I was going through this incredible, one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life, what Elizabeth taught me to focus on was God's love, His promises, a hope for a better future. And something she shared, and it came up last night, if you guys have ever watched the memorial service for Elizabeth last night, was that, the mission is more important than pain. The love of my family is more important than the pain. Doing what's right and doing what's important, even when I don't feel like it, is more important than the pain. And that, it's easy to say, maybe a saying like that, but Elizabeth lived that out. And in doing so, she inspired me every day, and I had some really bad days, to just do a little bit better. And I am so incredibly grateful for who Elizabeth is, who she was. And my prayer is that the legacy is you guys live your life. You model the love that your mom had, the love that your grandma had, if this is being watched that far down, in a way that it profoundly impacts and touches the lives of everybody around you for good. Because guess what? That's how people will know that we're in a relationship with Christ, is that love. And that's what your mom did everywhere she went. Everybody I'm talking to here, we're at a party. Every single person I've talked to was touched by your mom's love. Nobody remembers the fact that she struggled the last 5 years from her health. That's not even how we think of her. What they think about is that who she was and her heart. And so anyway, I love your mom. She's amazing. And I know that she sowed that as a blessing into you guys. And I know you'll bring that out into the world around you.
Hi, I'm Betty Ryder. I'm Steve's mom, Elizabeth's mother-in-law. And I want to just say that Steve and Elizabeth were the most welcoming family to come to. They've never shied away from inviting my husband and I, we live in Wisconsin, they've never shied away from inviting us out to see our grandsons and them. And one time I had an Amish man leave the Amish community and he started coming to our church. And his name was Levi. And his wife didn't want to leave the Amish community, so he and his wife were going to fly to Colorado Springs for a marriage retreat. And Levi was flying separate from his wife, so I told him, well, if you're in Colorado Springs, you can always connect with my son Stephen, his wife Elizabeth, and our 2 grandsons. And I said, just stop and say hi, and they would welcome you into their home. Well, Amish live a different life, and to Levi, that meant I can go stay at their house for the whole weekend, and I can have my meals there. And so he came, and they welcomed him, knowing that he might stop by. And Levi just kind of stayed, and they said, well, would you like to stay the night? Oh, yeah, he said, I was planning on that. And he spent time, of course, with Matthew and Caleb because Levi had children of his own. And then he went to the retreat, and on the way back from the retreat, he made sure that he stopped in to see Steve and Elizabeth again. And when it was time for him to leave, he said, Elizabeth, would you take me to the airport? And when I found out, I was just horrified. I thought I was just inviting him for maybe to say hi and a meal. Oh, Elizabeth said, it's fine. She said, he was welcome with us anytime. He was very friendly and good with the boys, so he said, not a problem. And that's the way they were. They would always welcome people into their home. Our youngest son, Ryan, lived with them for about a year, and they always made him feel so much at home. When Elizabeth and Ryan would go shopping, Ryan is 6'10", and he could look over the different shelves and the different rows. And Elizabeth said, I love to take Ryan shopping because he always knew what row I needed to go to get a certain product. And then she would always scout out who was the cutest girl at checkout so that maybe Ryan could check out that girl. So welcoming, loving, that was Elizabeth, and definitely a smiler. And I will miss her greatly.
Steve and Matthew and Caleb, you guys have been such a treasure to Dustin and I, and just you guys being in our youth group for so many years and just being part of our family. And we just love you guys so much, and we believe in you, and we are here for you guys, whatever you need. And my gosh, the times that you guys would bring us over and Elizabeth would make these delicious meals, and then we would just play apples to apples all night and just play video games. And we just love you guys, and we care so much for you guys, and we have just, the memories are just beautiful that we have with y'all. And so your mom was one of the most special people that I've ever met in my life. Her kindness is just something that is very rare and unique and beautiful, and you guys have that in you. You have so much of your mom in you. So we love you guys, and we love you. Yeah.
My favorite thing about Elizabeth was that she always checked in no matter how she was feeling. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. But the sole reason I have Marco Polo app was to talk to Elizabeth. And, every once in a while I'd get an update and I could just see Elizabeth checking in. And we have these 10-minute back and forth Marco Polo sessions, just updating each other on our lives. And really the only reason I'd check in on Marco Polo was to see Elizabeth. And then another thing I loved was, we had a shared gluten intolerance, and the last time we had coffee together at Loyal in February, she was like, screw it, I'm getting a croissant, and we just enjoyed a chocolate croissant together, and it was great.
Hey Steve, hey Matthew, hey Caleb. I was trying to think of what to share. There's lots of stories that I could probably share and lots of attributes about Elizabeth that I know people have shared. But the past couple of weeks, two things have come to my mind. that brought me a lot of peace and I've thought about over and over. And I'll try not to cry, but one, you guys weren't there because you're men and you weren't invited, but whenever the ladies at our church got together, one of the Des actually asked Elizabeth to share her testimony, and obviously we're in the middle of COVID, it was on Zoom. I wish we all could have been together in person, but I know, and after Elizabeth shared, we all could tell like she had put so much thought into sharing what she shared that morning, and a ton of it, I'll say this quickly, was just her testimony. One of the things she said was, my testimony is one of redemption, and it was beautiful, and I'm really thankful, honestly, that she had that time, even with that small group of women, you could tell that she had talked to God about just parts of her journey and what she wanted to share with us this morning. And for me, I don't know, it felt not like closure is not the right word, but I think back about that, of just her even preparing for sharing that morning with us, and it's something that makes me happy and brings me a lot of peace, and it was beautiful to hear her share. And it was beautiful what the Lord highlighted for her to share with us, and I'm just really glad that she had that opportunity with us and that she even prepared that and spent that time with the Lord. Another thing that really I think about too is just she was so awesome at reaching out to people, and even on the morning of the day that she passed away, I know that she had reached out to so many people, and so many people had let me know that they were talking to her that morning and had reached out and talked to her. And for someone that reaches out and shares with so many people, I'm really glad that on her last morning here, sorry to cry, I'm really glad that it was filled with just love from friends. I hate that you guys couldn't be with her, and but I'm glad that her morning was filled with love and words from friends and support and encouragement, and that brings me a lot of peace and a lot of happiness. I'm so honored that me and Justin could be with you that night. We love you guys so much. And Steve, even hearing you share last night at her memorial service, and what Justin shared too, I really feel like we're just with you guys for this next season. And I love what Justin said just about Elizabeth almost having that moment to release a lot of things, and find that peace herself, even in that week before. And I can say with honesty that we're gonna miss her so much and but I really am just also looking forward to whatever God has for y'all in this next season, and really believe that it's gonna be amazing. And I really believe that Elizabeth saw some of that too, and that brings me a lot of peace as well. So we're just here for you guys, and you know that, with you for the journey, and just excited to see what God's gonna do. And for all the good moments and all the hard moments, we just love you guys so much and are thankful that you're in our lives, and all of our love.
Hi there. I met Elizabeth in 2001, right when I moved to Colorado Springs. We met at church. And a few months later, I was hired to work in her department at Focus on the Family. She saw how much help I needed, and I just had a hard time working my way around their computer system, and she would always come and help me. And we had a lot of fun. It blossomed into a really special, tight 19-year friendship. I've been out here to Colorado to visit her. She's come and visited me in Pennsylvania. Something that happened with Elizabeth and I that is pretty memorable to me is the time that I have ever laughed the most in my entire life is with Elizabeth. And I just feel like she wants you all to hear this story. It is honestly not a story that happened to us. Let me just tell you, we were at work and we went to our supervisor because he was looking sort of weird. And we're like, Daryl, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, I was just checking on my mom. I was calling my mom to see how she was. And Daryl's like 50 at this point. And we're like, oh, what happened? And he said she was going to a Bible study in downtown Colorado Springs, and she was in her 70s. And she parked the car on sort of a busy street, and she opened the door and then went to get her Bible that was in the passenger side, and a Colorado Springs city bus came by and flattened her open door. It ran into it, and she was fine, but this is what happened. And Elizabeth and I were like, oh. So then we had like 3 hours before the end of work, and we walked out together. We used to walk every day during lunch, and we walked out together. Everyone had left, and we lost it. We both peed in our pants. We lost all muscle control, just laying on like a little parking mound grass area, guffawing. Just, I have never not been able to move or breathe like that. It was amazing. She also loved baseball so much and was such a good texter with my husband whenever the Oakland A's were playing, because she knew that they were his team. But what I really love about Elizabeth is our prayer times together. She was a prayer warrior, and she really loved Jesus more than anything else. And that was the most important thing that she ever imparted to me, was this like pure, ferocious love for Jesus that transcends any circumstances that you're in. So I pray that you guys will know that and always remember it, because I'm going to remember that until the moment I get to see Elizabeth again.
The first thing I think about Elizabeth is appropriately here at this location. And she was here supporting her mom through supporting other people going through hard times. And she was amazing. She was faithful. She was calm. I always felt like she had my back. I felt like she was a sister, even though she was a lot younger. And I just wanted to say how special she is and was to me. And I know she was to you, her family, very much so. I'm so sorry for your loss. But we had her for a period of time, you longer than I, and we're so blessed and thankful we did have her. She touched all our lives in big ways and small ways. I wish I could think of a funny story to tell. I'm sure there were some funny stories. I remember her as a mom with Matthew and Caleb, pretty small, and she was great. She just went from supporting and being a great coach and friend to being a mom and making peanut butter crackers, and that was amazing to watch her just flow in and out of being a mom. I saw her with Steve several times and just saw the love that they had, and that was very, very special. And I just feel that she, even though she lived a shorter life than we would have liked to see her live, she lived a very rich, full life. And I'm really grateful to have known her, and just she'll always be in my heart and always be in my thoughts, and as I know she will be for you, her family. And if you need anything, just holler. Love y'all.
Hello, you all. This is very uncomfortable to be on camera, but I'll do it for you, Elizabeth. I've known your mom for, as long as I know Deanne. It's been maybe like 20 years now. She was one of my support people when I was working actually here in Elizabeth with Deanne. And I just remember her loving kindness, ways of supporting me. She always had something positive and encouraging to say. She loved her God more than anything else, and just seeing that love that she had for Jesus and God just was very encouraging, and that her physical never stopped her from living life to the fullest. I know she loved her children and her husband more than anything in the world too, and I was just really blessed to know her. The last memory I have of Elizabeth was at Jacob's wedding, and there was a time that all of you got together and you went out to the dance floor, and I just saw the Spirit moving, and it was just such a special, orchestrated time when you were all dancing. I wish I could put it in words what I got to capture in my mind that day. It was so beautiful. And I remember as I said goodbye to Elizabeth, she was a little upset because I of things that had happened in the family, and it's just like, you know, her heart was always for people that were in pain, and she just wanted to always make it better and make it more bearable, and I feel like she always kind of felt that pain that other people felt, and she wanted people just to live in freedom, and that's her big legacy, you know, like live in freedom and be in the joy of the Lord always. As you grow up, Matthew and Caleb, always remember that about your mom.
All right, so my story about Miss Elizabeth was that, like, we went to Freddy's one time, and at this time, it was just right after church. We were just having fun or whatever, and she was just so generous because the boys asked for whatever they wanted, and she would just give it to them without a question, because I think that's just the type of person she was. She was just such a kind and loving person, and never had any hesitation about giving anything to her family, and I think that's what we should remember her for.
So, I don't know, Elizabeth, she really just made me feel like so known and seen, and just loved. I always enjoyed getting coffee with her. Those were really intimate, close times that I had with her that I will remember forever. She's always kind of made me just really, she's brought out the best in me, which was always so good to have and like be around, and so I'll always cherish those moments, and yeah, I love her and I'll miss her. And
all right, well, hello, I'm Matthew Clark.
And I'm Susie Clark.
And we are here at the celebration in Elizabeth, Colorado, which is unironically where I first met your mother, for
Deanne.
Matthew and Caleb, and and your wife, Steve. I wouldn't meet you guys for probably a couple years later, but we met right up the hill. This is where Pathway to Full Freedom was working, and it was with your mother-in-law / grandmother, Go-Go. And here I was, an angry religious sex addict, and your mother was there to support in the ministry. And I think what was really the most meaningful to me was really there was a sense of acceptance. And when you deal with what I was dealing with, there's a lot of shame and a lot of self-hatred, and you kind of feel like you're the worst person in the world. And to see your mother's just angelic smile, and she was always positive and upbeat, and but like I said, there was just never felt like any kind of judgment, and this sense of acceptance. And we're being visited by a canine here. Yeah, that was one of the things that really impacted me the most. So most of my relationship with your mom, your wife, was through the ministry, where she was supporting, and we would, I think, did more with Go-Go, and so. But we would see each other from time to time, and we always had birthday parties and whatnot, and always shared good laughs. But yeah, the most profound takeaway I had from your mother was that sense of acceptance.
So Elizabeth has been an endearing sister because we share the same mom in Deanne, a surrogate mom, and spiritual mom, really. And one of the biggest things that Elizabeth impacted my life is just her brilliant smile and her brilliance of grace and love and kindness, and you never saw her pain because she was just full of relationship. And so even though we didn't have quite a bit as much history in the support realm, I just felt like I was still part of the family, and I just love Elizabeth, and I miss the opportunity, but I feel like I've missed the opportunity to get deeper with her because her time was cut short. But I know that on this other side of this what God has for us is going to be an amazing union, an amazing celebration to worship and glorify God together as a family. And but one of my favorite memories is actually when she had her 40th birthday party, and it was kind of a party up in the Springs just not too long ago, and I guess it was last year. And so we just had a fun time celebrating her life, and just we were all there together at the retreat together before that. So just had some special memories with your mom and how she how much she struggled, but yet it just her struggles were overglowing with the glory of how she knew her faith always took her through it. And I think that was the biggest thing that I gleaned from, is just her faithfulness to knowing that God had bigger plans for her. And I just want to impart that on you, and I just pray that over you as a blessing, as a family, that her legacy still lives on in you guys and grandchildren, if that's what God has planned. But I just bless you guys with just the amazing influence that and the impact that she had in her 40 years here. And I pray that over to you too, that you impart that and you just keep that going as your legacy. So God bless you guys. We love you from the Clarks.
Yep.
And you are family. So
Oh, that's a good thing, because I also was just thinking she always felt like a kid sister to me.
Yes.
Even though we mostly were in ministry and things, it was kind of I don't know, some kind of vibe that we just kind of picked up. She sort of felt like this kid sister, and yeah, like Susie said, she was just full of life, and definitely pass that blessing on to you guys.
Hi, this is Jay Munt, and wanted to say a few words about Elizabeth, and just really I'd like to say something to Elizabeth, actually, that I'm going to really miss you. I just think you're a wonderful woman, and I think that it's for Caleb and Matthew Caleb and Matthew and Steve. I'm just going to say this to Elizabeth, but you can know this is how wonderful she is. Your mom and your wife are, she just was so gentle, and she still is, because she still exists in heaven. So she's still going on. So we love that. I loved the way Elizabeth would always be so caring and kind to people. She just had this way of, as you all know, just such a gentle acceptance. And I so appreciated that gentle acceptance that she always had. And she was very patient, and just kind of just seemed to look inside like my soul and go, it's all right, Jay. I love who you are. I know you're a little hyper right now, a little, whatever. And because we worked together, and she would just be so patient with me over and over and over again. And I know I could be a little challenging sometimes to work with, so I really appreciated the way Elizabeth consistently brought love in every time, and consistently brought in a servant's heart every time. And so I really like that. And I also loved, for Caleb and Matthew and Steve, I loved our times when we went out to eat at the Mexican restaurant, and we went out just a few times. It wasn't very much, but after Elizabeth quit working for me, we still went out and hung out a few times. And I just want to tell you, I really treasured our times together, my time with your family, because you guys are a really special family. So Matthew and Caleb, you guys are awesome guys, and there's a deep richness in each of you, and I'm excited to see how that develops as you get older, and how you develop in spite of this. But I know that you've had lots of really wonderful years of being loved by a wonderful woman and by a wonderful dad. So, and Steve, I don't even know what to say except that I really wish you the best. I believe there's good stuff to come, and so but I always love you guys. If you want to go out to dinner again, I'm all for it. Thanks.
Hey Matthew, hey Steve, hey Caleb. I'm not too great at this kind of stuff, but so I just figured I'd share one of my kind of favorite stories that me and Elizabeth would always kind of have a laugh about. Was when my mom was kind of against me always watching Friends and never let me, but every time I'd go to Elizabeth and hang out with you guys at night, her and me would watch the show Friends and kind of get away from that, from my mom, and kind of cheat the system a little. There was one time though, we ended up sending you guys to bed about couple hours early than you normally go to bed, just so we could bring out a chocolate cheesecake that she hid in the freezer, and we could do that and binge watch Friends almost the entire night. So I just wanted to share that.
My story is about the first time that Elizabeth ever gave me coffee. She picked me up from somewhere and we were heading to her place. And of course, the first place she went to before home was Starbucks because she loves her coffee. And she asked me if I wanted anything, and I didn't know what to get, so she was like, don't worry about it. And I sat down. She came back with 2 large cups of coffee, and I was like, what'd you get? And she's like, I got you a pumpkin spice latte. And I was like, oh, thank you, but I'm not supposed to have coffee. And she was like, well, just deal with it. Your mom will be fine. Just don't tell your mom. We get to the house, and my mom smelled my breath, and she's like, what'd you get? I was like, Elizabeth got me coffee. She was like, Elizabeth Ryder, you gave my daughter coffee. So yeah, that's my story.
Well, I am Gogo, and Matthew, Caleb, I love you, and I know you're going to be showing this not only to your wives, but possibly your children and your grandchildren. And so I'm here to talk to you about your mother, Elizabeth. Your mother, Elizabeth, was born 4 pounds. She was a preemie. And when she was born, she didn't need to be in the incubator because they said she had really strong lungs. And they were really impressed. When you go 40 years ago, preemie babies didn't survive like they do today. So Elizabeth was an infant that had a hard time breastfeeding. It was really hard for her, so we had to bottle feed her. And then they would have to pull the fluid from her stomach because she wasn't digesting it. So your mother grew up very strong. When she was younger, she had an athletic body. Her arms were just naturally had muscles in them in her legs. Your mom, she played baseball, but she loved to play volleyball, and that you probably already know. So you know basically the story of how she got sick. But Matthew, I want you to know how much she just truly adored you. And she put all of her effort to give you options and choices so that you would be able to make your own decisions in life. And I know her heart is that she's proud of you and that she knows you're making the decision that is right for your journey with the Lord. Caleb, your heart and your connection with people, your mom loved that. She loved your curly hair. She loved your smile. And she even loved the way you would get so hyperactive. So I just want to remind you how much she loved you. Those of you that may be listening to this that didn't know Elizabeth, she was an incredible daughter of mine. And if you've listened to the memorial, you'll know that our relationship was more than just a mother and daughter. In fact, I was just talking to somebody else today about how do I tell people about the amazing relationship we had. We were entwined like one spirit. We found a place to where we were in the freedom to walk the body of Christ. And so Elizabeth is an amazing, she is forgiving. And what she would do is she would not only forgive you, but she would welcome you back into her heart. And she did that for me. And so we brought, just so you know, one of the things that she would just love, she was part of the ministry, Pathway to Full Freedom. And of course, out here in this yard that you're seeing, all this video is on the place where we did the ministry. And we spent about 12 years, almost every week, being out here on this beautiful property in Elizabeth. So what our heart was at Pathway for Freedom is for people to be responsive and to live out of who they were created to be. Elizabeth would want you to search your heart before the Father. Don't let any obstacles get in the way of who you are in Christ. And when it is hard and it is painful, remember that the yoke of the Lord's, it's light. If it is a heavy and it is a burden, there is something that is an obstacle and a hindrance in the way. And she would want you to come before the Lord and seek that out. Because our heart in our family now is to live abundantly and live it joyfully. So remember her smile, but remember her tenacity. Remember she didn't give up. Remember that even when she was in pain, she had hope. So remember, hope never fails, and hope did not fail her because God gave her a beautiful journey, and He has given her a blessing to be His daughter. So remember, Gogo as her mother, I love all of you as well, even if I don't get to meet you or see you, because we are a family of love and kindness, and it transcends 1,000 generations.
Hi, Steve and Matthew and Caleb and family. This is Pam and Jim Rogers. We're kind of new into your life. The last couple years we've known you as we've started at Pulse. I just want to just remember Elizabeth in a couple different ways. One, back in maybe March or April, she did a testimony at the women's, on Zoom at the women's meeting. And her testimony was so powerful about God's faithfulness, her walk with the Lord. And she was so vulnerable then. It's just been the last couple months, it's just been everyone that has shared has been vulnerable and making a difference in each one's lives. And so I just think that she was the catalyst. She was the first one to do that and really bring us closer together as a family of believers. The other thing is, Elizabeth helped out with children's ministry, and I remember approaching her about a year ago, and I said, Elizabeth, the Lord is asking me to ask you if you'll help with children's. And I said, I don't know if you even want to do that. And so her response is, well, children's isn't my thing, but I've been praying and asking God to give me something to do in some way to be a part of things. And so about a week later, she came back and she said, Pam, I'm going to do it. I'm petrified and I don't know what to do, but I'm going to be a part of it. And so I just admire the fact that she stepped into things, even though she didn't know what it looked like or how to do it, but she was being faithful. And the last thing I want to share, is getting to know Matthew and Caleb has just been such a joy for Jim and I. They're just terrific boys. And Steve, you and Elizabeth have raised, and you're continuing to raise, wonderful young men who love people, who love each other, who love family, and who are respectful. And so I just say hats off to you all. And just like last night, Kara was singing, our children's children. So their children's children will have that in their hearts too. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, as I thought about memories of Elizabeth, it was always interesting because when I was around her, you could never remember that she was actually sick, had not felt well, because she never complained about anything. And I remember I had come back and I was teaching at the church, and she came up to me and she asked for prayer. And my first response was like, what do you need prayer for? Because she just never seemed like she was never that person who was so needy with all of this stuff. Yeah. And yet she was suffering from so many things, and she was just it gave everybody this idea that, you know what, just because something's happening to you doesn't mean you have to live that. And she didn't live it. And I know even the day that she passed away, she sent me a text message that morning, just happy. She was feeling better. She got a good night's sleep. She was planning on coming home on Friday, and then of course, obviously, she didn't. But it shocked me, because I'm thinking, man, she's getting it back. It's going to happen again. She's going to be home. And she's going to be missed because of that. The fact that she was always positive, she always wanted to lift other people up and to be a part of their lives. And that's going to be missing. And I know that Steve is going to try and step into some of that as best he can, and so are the boys. Yeah. It's been interesting to be around the boys because they have such a desire to be a part of things and to just be positive about stuff. Yeah. And even when they were with us the other day, they've got a positive attitude about that. And for what they've been through, that's just amazing. Yeah. So that's going to be part of her legacy, is just how they have continued to grow into that. So we just want to bless their family. We want to bless all that they're doing and just tell them, we know everybody's going to miss her. We know they're going to miss her tremendously. And I know I will as well. But you know what? We will get to see her again. And when we get to see her again, it'll be a real joyful time. And so we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to seeing these young boys grow into young men that they're going to be. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Little Elizabeth's story. I remember when she told me how I had asked her how Steve had proposed to her and if she had done it, or if he had been romantic when he had proposed to her. And she said, well, actually, we were getting ready to go to Wisconsin at like 5 in the morning, and I go to sit in the car, and I'm super tired. I had just woken up and was barely even functioning. And he's like, why are you sitting in the car? And she's like, well, we're going on a road trip. I'm just getting in the car. Well, there's something on your seat. And so she looks down and doesn't really see it, and then Steve's like, right there. So she sees that there's a ring box, and she opens it up, and he's like, well, will you? And she's like, so that's how he asked her to marry me, Elizabeth. And I never forget that story, because I had asked him if he had like planned something romantic or had gotten her roses or set it all up, and it was like super early in the morning, and I was like, well, that's kind of makes sense of how Steve would do it, kind of getting it done. But I think he was so nervous that when he proposed, he wanted it done before they went on the road trip. So that's something I always remember. And I said, well, did you say yes or did you say no? And she just nodded, gave the big smile. She's like, of course, I said yes. So that's my Elizabeth story to the family.
Hey guys, just wanted to let you know how much I've been thinking about you. Caleb and Matthew, you've always had a special place in my heart. The thing about your mom, she was always happy, always smiling. I knew you guys for years and years. Didn't even know your mom was sick until maybe 3 years after I started coaching you guys. And then she came to practice one day wearing oxygen. But even then, that wasn't who made her. She always had a smile on her face. She didn't dwell on it. She's such a petite little lady, but so strong. And I always wondered, this had to have been just a one-time incident where she got sick, and then I'd see her another time wearing a heart monitor. And it was over the years, finally realized her struggles. Like I said, she never let it define her. She was always the first one to give me a smile. That year that we didn't have somebody helping me coach, and I called her, and she said, oh yeah, we'll talk Steve into doing it. Sorry about that, Steve. I know how much fun you had. I know I did. I will always think back on our times together, how strong she was, how strong you guys are. And if you ever need anything, I'm just a phone call away. So I guess that's about it. Take care. I love you.
So I'm Guy, and this is June 27th, 2020. Elizabeth's mother, Deanne, and I have been married now almost 3 months. So my experiences with Elizabeth have been limited, but I have two I want to share. And the first one happened and it wasn't with Elizabeth, but it happened when Deanne and I were in Durango, Colorado at the end of January. And we were there to visit a mutual friend who had a ministry organization there, and we were talking to him about possibly collaborating with him. He'd actually done some coaching for me. And we were in the front seat of my car in the hotel parking lot, and we had gotten news about Elizabeth having gotten very sick at that time. And so we held hands and we began praying for Elizabeth. And without realizing it, as I started praying, I said, Lord, I really want you to reach out and just touch our daughter. And afterwards, Deanne looked at me, and I said it a couple more times. She said, do you know what you just said? And I said, what? And she said, you called Elizabeth our daughter. Deanne and I were not married yet. I just recently proposed, yet already at that point, I was feeling like Elizabeth was becoming my daughter, and I wasn't even married to her mother yet. There was just this really bond that was developing despite very limited interactions between us. The second experience I want to share is this was February 15th. I, at the time, was living in Phoenix, and I came up here to the Denver area for Valentine's Day weekend. And that Saturday night, February 15th, we, Steve and Elizabeth and a few other members of family and friends, went out to a karaoke place. That's because I love karaoke. And I sang some love songs to Deanne and that night, and Elizabeth brought that up later when we got married. We got married in my living room on April 5th in Phoenix with an officiant and two witnesses and about 35 people on Zoom, because you couldn't have a wedding with people attending because of the coronavirus restrictions. And then after the ceremony, people stayed on Zoom and shared their perspectives on Deanne and me, because we had members of both family and friends. And Elizabeth said something very, very cool. She said, these two at karaoke, I watched them live in their own world. They were like an island together. All these people around, all these people talking, drinking, having fun, and there's my mother and her fiance, and it's like the rest of the world didn't even exist right then. And it was the neatest thing that she shared. And yeah, I looked at each other and just, we're so blessed by that. And that was Elizabeth. And at the memorial service last night, there was a picture next to the stage of Elizabeth smiling. And I almost went up to the picture and kissed her forehead in the picture, because it's something I wish I had done while she was still alive. I just had only a couple of times where I actually was in her physical presence. She felt like my daughter. So those are my sharing. That's my sharing. That's my story.
Hi, Gogo here again. I just wanted to come back and talk to you about Elizabeth. Elizabeth had a heart that she wanted to know how to sing. So when we took her for karaoke, she lit up. She was just so excited to be there. Now, Steve hated karaoke, so that's why they never went. So while she was sitting there, she knew every song, she knew the words to every song, and she just lit up as she was sitting there. Now, we didn't get her up there to do karaoke because our heart was to get her back to do it another day. And she knew she was going to do it, but she was just excited to be there and be in the excitement of the words and the song and just be familiar with it all. And so she had a heart to sing. So when you've heard her heart for worship, there was a voice behind that. And so out there, family, go do some karaoke in her name. And if you don't want to sing, you know what? Do it anyway. Because when you use your voice and you step out and you're uncomfortable, you grow and you bring pleasure to Elizabeth.
All right, Steve, I just wanted you to know that you and Elizabeth have always been family. And I mean, you guys mean the world to me, because when I was in my rough times, you gave my best friend a home when I couldn't. And I hope he was as much of a blessing to you as he was to me. And since you guys did that, I mean, you guys are family. I love you and I thank you so much. And Elizabeth, can't wait to see you again. So you guys, just anytime, hit me up. We'll go to a baseball game when they reopen. Love you guys and thank you so much.
Hi, Steve, Matthew, and Caleb. It's an honor to be here and to celebrate Elizabeth's life. And I was just thinking of some of our memories with Elizabeth and you guys, and of course for me, back when I started at Focus, I was single and I didn't have a lot of friends, and you all invited me over all the time for supper, and I have a lot of memories of Matthew and Caleb, just wee little tykes, a little bit bigger than Hannah, but really, really small, and it's just great to see you guys all as a family. And Elizabeth was always so hospitable, And I just learned from Gogo that she was praying for me to find a wife. And here's Amy. Here is the Lord's providing for me. So, and then, go ahead.
Well, I would just add on to that just how appreciative I am and have been for how, you guys all invited me in and welcomed me. And I know that I think the first time that I met everybody was at the Super Bowl party, and we sure had a lot of fun. And I believe that was the year that the Atlanta Falcons were supposed to win, and they did not.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty entertaining game.
Yep, the Falcons were up by like 30 some points.
It was a lot. I don't know how much.
And the Pats came back like
Yep.
in a very convincing manner.
Yes.
And then you all were at our wedding too,
Yes,
and we talked to you guys afterwards. And I still remember that unintentionally we put you at one of the last tables to get food. And
Elizabeth reminded us of that. She said, I have very hungry boys. So I think that's when I first noticed her spunkiness, and that was really funny.
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, it was great. So glad we can be part of this.
Yes.
Elizabeth was, she's great. I mean, her character really kind of shone out to me as the contentment and the peace that she had and the confidence going through all the trials that she did. But she was consistent as a lot of the testimonies at the service last night reminded us. She was just so much an encourager, so active in so many people's lives, though she had her own challenges. And what a what a special thing that is for somebody going through something to be able to get over that and minister to other people.
What I remember most about Elizabeth was just her kind and gentle spirit. She is always very positive. She encouraged me with her smile through texts, through emails, through cards. I just loved her and her family. So I just love you, Elizabeth. Love you, writers. Thank you.
So I first met Elizabeth back in 2000, and we quickly became friends. When my brother Steve and Elizabeth got married, she quickly became the sister that I never had before. Someone I talked to a lot, and when I was single, talked about girls and other things in life. I have many stories that I can share, but ultimately I just want to share that I'm so thankful that Elizabeth's last Christmas was spent here in Australia. And in Australia, Christmas is in the summertime. So what we did is when Steve, Elizabeth, and the boys came down here, we rented out a house on the beach and just spent Christmas out on the beach and just enjoying wonderful family time. And I'm just so grateful that that was her last Christmas. It was a wonderful one that we all loved. And she was a woman that loved people and loved Jesus.
Hey, it's probably your face on now.
Yeah. She was a woman that loved people and Jesus. And her faith in Jesus stayed strong throughout all the challenges and struggles that she went through. And she went through many. And that is something that I'm really grateful for.
The camera's like, no way.
So when she was out here for Christmas, Cora, how old were you then? Do you remember when Auntie came to visit? You were just a baby. You were like six months old. And Auntie E and I were waiting for the boys because they went and hung out in caves one day, and Cora was too little, so we were just spending some time and visiting, and we decided, even though it was the morning, that we would get ice cream. And so Auntie E and I got ice cream, and we were eating it, and Cora looked really interested in the ice cream, and she had never had ice cream before. And so we gave her a little lick of the ice cream. Do you remember your first ice cream?
I want that ice cream again.
You want that ice cream again? Yeah, and so Cora kept going in for more licks of the ice cream because she thought it was so yummy. So Cora had her first ice cream with Auntie E. Yeah. And then I think one of my favorite memories, so I had not met Elizabeth. Well, I'd met Elizabeth very briefly in Southern California when Ryan and I were dating. And then because she wasn't at Christmas when we got engaged or at our wedding, I didn't really have any time with her until we were back in Wisconsin for one of our receptions after we were married. And at that point, we took an evening and Ryan and I went with Steve and Elizabeth to the Dells and we're hanging out and walking. And at one point, Ryan and Steve were walking in front of, please don't kick me, thank you. We're walking in front of Elizabeth and Elizabeth and I were just chatting about our husbands and comparing their butts and their different shapes and the family. And I feel like that was one of the first conversations of many where Elizabeth and I just talked about the family and our families and just started our friendship off to the right start, talking about our husbands and friends. So, yeah. She is definitely missed dearly especially at every writer event, where I think often to myself, if Elizabeth was here, I would be doing this or this. And I definitely miss my conspiracy partner at those family events. So, yeah, there we go. Anything else?
Oh, thank you.
Elizabeth was my niece, but more importantly, she was my friend. And I'm so thankful that we had such a wonderful relationship. I adored her from the moment I held her in my arms when I was 17 years old. We have to be careful when we get on the phone because if we didn't watch the clock, we could talk for hours. And with the time change, it could get really late for her. Elizabeth loved all of her family fiercely. She was a mama bear. She loved her husband so much. And she loved her boys and just her whole family. She was the glue that kept a lot of the family connected. She handled her illness with such grace and such dignity. When you thought about Elizabeth or you talked to her, you knew her that her medical challenges didn't define who she was. She never wanted them to be more important than who she was as a person. Her legacy now will be from her boys as they saw a mom who loved the Lord first and foremost, who just lived life as best as she could, who showed them love unconditionally. And now through the Never Alone project, that hopefully nobody would have to deal with what she had to deal with. I remember she called me several times when she was in the hospital. We had some great conversations, and she was telling me about the dream she had, where the Lord was fighting for her health and fighting for her life. And she was so excited when she talked to me because she was she knew God was going to heal her, and she was just so excited about what God was going to do. And nobody expected God to heal her by taking her home. But I know that she's waiting for us there, and I'm thankful for our relationship.
Elizabeth was born 2 months early, so she had to spend 3 weeks in the hospital before she got to come home. I remember going to see her every night after I got off work, and she was this little 4.4 pound baby that I could hold in the palm of my hand. As she got older, I could see that she had the biggest heart out of anybody that I knew. An example of this is when she was in high school living with me in the 90s, she worked at Carl's Jr. in Lake Elsinore. And she would make friends with all the homeless people who would come in there just to get warm or grab a bite to eat. And there was times she would buy food for them. That's the kind of person she was. That's how she was throughout her whole life. She wanted to help everybody she could. And that's probably the biggest trait that I remember for her.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Taylor, or as Elizabeth knew me in Colorado, Liz, to her. And I just wanted to share a little bit about her friendship to me and how much it meant. I'm battling a chronic illness called multiple sclerosis, and I know that she had her own health challenges as well. And I have just been, as I prepared to do this video, just thinking about how much of an impact she had on my life. She was a huge encouragement to me. She was always there for me, always had an encouraging word, always had some things kind and sweet to say about me. And her friendship to me just meant a lot. I remember she would text me sometimes right when I needed to hear from someone or just hear like some sort of encouragement. She would be the one to text me. So I'm just grateful for the impact that Elizabeth had on my life. Most importantly, I wanted to share with you really quick this beautiful thing that she made me. So the front of this says love, and on the back of it, I was just moved to tears when I saw this again the other night because I always have it, but I haven't thought about it in a little bit. On the back of it, this whole thing is covered with, I don't know if you can read it because it's probably backwards, but it says things like full of purpose, full of life, worshiper, teacher, teachable, incredible, joyful, compassionate, thankful, rock star. She wrote so many things about me just as an encouragement to me of how she saw me. So I wanted you all to know that Elizabeth has had a huge impact on my life, and I'm so grateful for her life and for all the ways that God used her. And I just wanted to share this with you all, what a joy she was. And I'm so grateful that I got to be her friend and that I got to meet her. And she just played a huge role in my story, especially battling chronic illness and just being such an encouragement to me. So, Elizabeth, we miss you. We're so grateful for your life. And I just know you're having the best time up there in heaven looking out on us. And I hope you smile when I share this story because you've impacted me deeply. And I love you so much. We miss you.
I'm Fides Torres. Many of you know me as RTM Project Manager. I've been working for Steve since 2018, but what many of you might not know is that at the time I was still living in Venezuela. Venezuela is and was a really hard place to live and to try to raise a family. So when the interview process came to be for this position, I was nervous, I was scared, I really wanted this. So when the Zoom call came in, I jump in and I see Steve, and sitting next beside him, it's Elizabeth. And during this process, all that nervousness left me because I realized that I was talking with great people, that I was in the place that I needed to be. And by the end of all, we have a great laugh, we have a great interview, and I was hoping to get this job. I really was. And years later, Steve told me that she was an important part, really important part on that, because she kept telling Steve, you gotta be Fides, it's gotta be Fides, it's gotta be Fides, it's gotta be Fides. And I'm gonna be forever grateful with him for that. Not just because I got a job. I got the opportunity to meet amazing people. I got the opportunity to learn from him and to learn from her. I learned from her to be how to be caring, how to be empathic, how to treat others. I got a friend in her. We talk about music. We talk about the concert she wanted to go. She asked me about how my moving process to Spain was coming. And for example, at one point in Venezuela, we had a 2-week blackout. And one of my main worries at the time was, I don't want to lose a job. But she made sure that job was the last thing that I had to worry on that moment. She told me that everything's gonna be fine after all goes over, to stay with my family, to stay safe. And she was keeping me in her prayers. That helped. On that circumstances, that helped a lot. I miss her a lot, but I know that she's still here with us in our hearts and how we are and all the things that we learn from her. I know that she's there with her boys. I know she's there with Steve, and she will be forever remembered. Thank you. I miss you.